everybody, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I would like to compare 3 of the top brands of watercolor in the shade Ultramarine Blue, their PB29 pigment. Now, I've seen some comparison videos and blogs on watercolor in the past, but one thing that's always kind of, I felt has been lacking or has left me wanting more is that you'll often see them swatch them out and compare the swatches, but they don't, that only tells you half the story. It only gives you part of the picture. They don't show you necessarily how those colors mix to create different colors. So Ultramarine Blue happens to be one of my absolute favorite colors, not just in watercolor, but in every genre or every medium. And I have the Winsor Newton, the Daniel Smith, and the M. Graham for you guys today. And I'm also going to be showing you what kind of a purple that you can mix and what kind of a green that you can mix using the 3 different paints. We're going to talk about them, we're going to compare them a little bit, and I'm going to give you some of my final thoughts on them. So first I thought we'd just start out by swatching them. The first one that I have for you guys is the Winsor Newton French Ultramarine. This is PB29. So here it is on its own. This one is the half pan that I happen to have here, but I've used it in the tube as well. It's absolutely the same. I'll add a little bit of water to bring that down some. There we go. That is absolutely beautiful and a very, very lovely ultramarine blue. I noticed that Winsor Newton now has 37 milliliter tubes of watercolor, which I've never seen from any other brand before, and they do have it in their ultramarine blue shade. So the second one that I have is Daniel Smith's French Ultramarine. Right away I notice that this one, right off the bat, is just a little bit cooler than the Winsor & Newton. It's a little bit more neutral leaning. It's still French ultramarine, but the Winsor & Newton's is just a little bit more toward the violet. And then the last one that I have to show to you, excuse me, is the M. Graham. And right off the bat, I can see that M. Graham has the most pigment. Now, M. Graham just calls theirs ultramarine. They don't call theirs French ultramarine. But it's the exact same pigment, pigment blue 29. And before they even dry, immediately some of the first differences that I notice is that the Winsor & Newton is more violet. The M. Graham is the most saturated in mass tone. It can get the darkest. And the Daniel Smith is already more granular. I can just see, even though it's not dry yet, I can see bigger sediment landing on that paper. So the most granulation is coming from that Daniel Smith. So for simplicity's sake, I thought that we would use the same permanent rose or quinacridone rose for each of the blues, so we can get an idea of how these colors mix. So first I'm going to mix a violet with the Winsor & Newton. Noticing that as I'm mixing that off to the side, I'm not sure if that's in frame or not, that I need more of the blue right away. It just seems to be the case. So here is the violet that I can get with the Winsor & Newton. That is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Isn't that pretty? That's a very warm violet. You could mix it a little bit more toward the blue and get a little bit more of a blue violet if you wanted. See that? Oh, I love that back run. See how I can see the blue separating there? See that? That is really pretty. All right, next I'm going to mix the Daniel Smith's blue with some rose. Now that one it's taking more of the rose to get a violet. There it is. I don't think that the Daniel Smith ultramarine blue, French ultramarine blue, is quite as pigmented as the Winsor Newtons. The color's just not quite as strong. That's just my feeling about that. I can grab a little bit more rose and mix something a little bit warmer. But I don't think that violet, ooh, look at that when we mix it more toward the rose. Isn't that pretty? I don't think that violet is quite as visually eye clean as the violet I was able to mix with Winsor Newton. But a lot of granulation already, very sedimentary, very heavy granulation on that. That's beautiful. All right, let's go ahead in with that Graham. Here is the Graham. The violet we can get with that. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And then here's a little bit warmer of a variation. Isn't that pretty? Very nice. That's like an ultramarine pink almost kind of shade. Take a little bit of water and just bring this down a little bit. There we go. Nice granulation on this one too, but definitely not as much as the Daniel Smith's. Absolutely not. All right, now so for the green, I'm using the exact same yellow for each of the blues, just like before. And the yellow I'm using is an Cerulean or Azo yellow. And here's the first one. This is the Winsor Newton French Ultramarine with Azo yellow. Now Azo yellow is a very clean, visually eye clean, primary, cool leaning but primary yellow. So it's going to get us the most vibrant green mixture we can get. And here it is more toward the yellow. That is very pretty. Beautiful greens you can get with ultramarine blue. I think it's overlooked quite a little bit. Ultramarine blue and Azo yellow make some very beautiful greens. The Daniel Smith, I feel like, is not quite as pigmented. It's a little bit harder to get a more saturated tone, which is not usually the case with Daniel Smith paints. But this, I'm a little bit disappointed in their blue. Just a little bit. It's not bad. It's definitely the most granular and it has its place for sure. So there's the green, and then if I come in and I mix it more toward the yellow, very lovely, very fresh, pretty green. Gorgeous. Now we're going to do the same thing with the Graham. Now that Graham, immediately the ultramarine blue really overtook the yellow. So you could see how much darker that green can get because that blue is darker in mass tone because there's more pigment. So I can get more variety with that color, more versatility. And then I can add more of the yellow. So when you start out with a color that's already more pigmented, you get more mileage out of the color because you get more variety there. Very lovely. Alright, so I've allowed this to dry up completely, and a couple things that I did off camera that you didn't get to see is I went ahead and I glazed a stroke of color over the right hand side of each of the original swatches of color, just so you could see how they build on themselves and how you can build up the color and how they look in glazes. So also down here at the bottom, I wanted to test and see how they would flow wet into wet and how they would bloom. So I wet out each of the squares and then I just dropped some of the pigment into each one. So some of my final thoughts, starting off with Winsor Newton. This color is beautiful. They're French Ultramarine. It is definitely more toward the violet than any of the others, and the resulting purple mixtures were the most visually eye clean, I think, as a result of that. Some of the others were a little more neutral, a little bit more toward the neutral at least, and so, I mean, just look at that gorgeous warm violet that we have there. I can't deny that this is one of their strongest colors, is their French Ultramarine. The resulting green mixtures were also very, very lovely, and it has a gorgeous granulation to it that's not too much and not over the top. So if you like an in-between granulation, something that would be in between the Daniel Smith, which is the most granulating, and the M Gram, which almost doesn't granulate at all. Very subtle granulation. In the green mixtures, I don't see any granulation. In the violet mixtures, I see it very subtle. But M Gram is very smooth because their pigments are ultra finely milled. And we'll come back to that one in just a second. I noticed that it did not move quite as much wet into wet. It bloomed, but not as readily as some of the others. It took a little bit more time, and it pretty much stayed where I put it. It didn't get as wild and crazy as some of the others. This is an advantage when you're looking to get more control over your washes and over your wet into wet blending. But if you like to do more wild wet into wet washes, you might not be quite as happy with that one. However, I really do think that this is one of their strongest powerhouse colors, and I'm very happy with it. The Daniel Smith, I feel like you take just a small step back in pigmentation with their ultramarine blue, which is surprising to say for the Daniel Smith brand, but I have to be completely honest with you guys and let you know that that's how I feel. Their mixtures are gorgeous. Like I said, the Daniel Smith does granulate the most. They have the heaviest sedimentation here. And the violets that I mixed, I could just see the blue separating away from the rose. And so you get this effect with this Daniel Smith blue that you did not get with the others, because you can just see the individual speckles of color in there. Very, very beautiful. Bloomed very readily. But it's not going to get as strong in mass tone as the others. Certainly not as strong as the M Gram. The M Gram is my personal favorite because it's the strongest, but also because it's the smoothest. I like to work in realism a lot of the time, and I want that rich royal blue color, but I also want to be able to get it very smooth for realism. So this one happens to be my favorite. But which one should you purchase? Well, that is completely up to you. That is personal preference. If you want one that's the most violet, go for Winsor Newton. If you want one that's going to be the most granulating, go for Daniel Smith. And if you want one that's going to be the smoothest and the strongest, go for the M Gram. Personally, I use both of these in my work pretty frequently. The Daniel Smith works great for clouds, rocks, water, landscapes, and anywhere where you want that really pronounced texture. And the M Gram works better for smoother applications in realism. I wanted to remind everybody that I do currently have a full review on both the Winsor Newton and the Daniel Smith watercolors up on my channel. So I will link that up in the iCards for you and in the description box down below if you're interested. Let me know down below in the comment section which one of these is your favorite watercolor brand and which one of these blues is your favorite. Personally, I like them all so much. They really are beautiful. And let me know if you have any suggestions for any more of these color comparison type videos, because I'd be more than happy to do them. I wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, have a great day, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!